We welcome you today to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika Goswami. I'm the managing editor of On.media's B2B enterprise technology platforms. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, and they reach over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide, I'm told. The UK government's policy paper on cybersecurity and resilience statement and bill, released earlier this month, included no reference to quantum computers. This is despite the National Cybersecurity Center putting out advice last week that organizations have to introduce quantum safe algorithms in the next few years. Now, this is a sensitive situation for enterprises across the UK. Today, we speak with Chris Erven. He's a co founder and CEO of KETS Quantum Security. He'll be talking to us about the impact of quantum on security strategies and what the CISOs should be ready for, especially in view of the fact that there are no proper regulations in place once a risk becomes a reality. Right? So, Chris, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here with us today. Looking forward to a really intelligent conversation because, authority. So Chris Erven, he's a CEO and co-founder of KETS, has been building prototype quantum communication systems and exploring their commercial potential for the last 19 years. After starting as a lecturer in quantum engineering at the Quantum Engineering Technology Labs, that's a QET Labs at the University of Bristol, where he helped to pioneer a next generation chip-based approach to quantum encryption. He's now commercializing this approach in the quantum startup KETS. He holds a PhD from the Institute of Quantum Computing and a BSc Honors in System Design Engineering, both from the University of Waterloo. That's quite a bit. A little bit about KETS now. KETS develops quantum safe chip based encryption to protect critical data from all advanced computer attacks. Would you like to tell us a little more about KETS, Chris?
Sure. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I mean, you said it in a nutshell. We pioneered this chip-based approach to quantum safe hardware at the University of Bristol, and now we're commercializing it. KETS, we have systems deployed, and what the key bit is, it's chip-based. So at the heart of systems, like you see in the background, are tiny chips that are like fractions of the size of your pinky fingernail. That's where all the magic sort of quantum photonics happens. And really what that means is it lets us shrink form factors so that we can start to get it into all of our critical comms equipment. And it lets us bring prices down as well, because typically these are very expensive systems, which are fine when you're at small scale. But when you want to, we really have a mission to deploy this to billions of devices around the planet, that the price has to come down. So that's the key bit about the chips and why it matters. And we were really some of the pioneers of the field.
That's wonderful to know. So, I will ask you some questions from my level of knowledge about it, but I'm really inviting you to speak because our audience are CXOs, they are technology leaders, and they do understand much more than I do, I think, in many cases. So please explain in detail every question. Existing encryptions and how quantum computers will have the ability to break them.
Sure. It's a really good question. So, and a great place to start. Generally, when we're sending information in a secure way right now, it's a two-step process. So in the first step, we use something called public key infrastructure. And in there is algorithms like RSA, elliptic curves. And what we're doing is trying to share a symmetric key between myself and yourself, for instance, because that's a bit of an expensive process. And we want to have the same key. And so once we have it, then we can use it to as the key in a high volume encryption algorithm like AES. It's kind of like if I want to get my latest Hollywood script to you, I'd lock it in a safety deposit box. And if you and I only had the key, then I could just sort of send it however I wanted by FedEx or something. And I know that only you could unlock it. And the trouble is that first step really relies on a math problem that's easy in one direction, but very hard in the other direction. So if you take RSA, it has a public and a private key. So the public literally is public. You publish it on your website, and you're trying to get a symmetric key to me. So you would take, you choose one randomly, you'd use this public key and sort of mix them together in this RSA algorithm and send it to me. And that's easy. That's the easy direction. And then I get it, and I need that private key to undo it. That's the hard direction. You need a private key to undo it. And so far, that looks pretty difficult. And then if that all works out, you've got the symmetric key, one copy of it. I've got a symmetric key, one copy of it. Now, the huge caveat is that quantum computers are tailor-made for the math that are under these one-way functions. It typically boils down to factoring. So we can easily sort of do 5 times 3 is 15, but it's generally much harder to go the other way, especially when the numbers get really big. Just figure out that 15 is 5 times 3. And really factoring at the bottom of RSA, it's the bottom of elliptic curves or variants of it. And for a classical computer, um, when they try and factor, it's really like going through a big maze. They sort of try one route, oh, that's not the answer, and they backtrack, and they try another route, that's not the answer. So it's really doing it in sort of sequential steps. But in the weird and crazy world of quantum, a quantum computer can actually sort of put itself in a superposition of multiple states. So it can sort of basically try and go through this maze all at once. And a very clever operation on the other side then pops you out actually one of the factors. And so right now we're secure basically because we make this maze the size of a continent. So obviously if I was trying to get across that, I wouldn't do it in my lifetime. And that's sort of what we do with classical computers. But once a quantum computer comes along, they try it all at once. And so what took, I don't know, millions of years suddenly pops out in a microsecond. So, and that's why sort of we got involved in commenting on the recent bill because it's absolutely needed. But it's kind of a shame that it misses any mention of quantum computers because, as you said, NCSC is releasing some very good advice there. And it's kind of like the bill is already playing catch up rather than looking ahead 5, 10, 15 years out to what matters. So I think in a nutshell, that's sort of why we're worried, certainly at KETS, for quantum computers breaking encryption.
So clearly, critical infrastructure needs to protect itself from quantum computers immediately or as soon as they come, which is like maybe another 5 years. By the time they're actually fully functional and used by enterprises. Which sectors do you think are the most vulnerable to attacks which quantum computers can enable or can crack? I mean, I don't know. The right word should be crack, probably.
You're exactly on the right track. And maybe just spending a little time on the timeline itself, because we truly believe that they're called cryptographically relevant quantum computers, a big long title, but basically it's one big enough to crack
Hmm.
our security. That's what it
Yeah,
means.
yeah,
We believe it'll be here in 5 years or less. And
yeah.
there's a good chance we won't even hear about it. It'll kind of be like Enigma and Bletchley Park, because big companies, state actors are all working hard on this, and it really is a profound advantage. They'll keep it secret when they turn on the first one. And I just actually came back from a wonderful conference called quantum.tech. And there's all sorts of estimates out there. Some people put it at 5, 10, 15 years. But there was a really interesting point made there that lots of these estimates come from sort of people in their niches. They're asking sort of a hardware person, how long? And then they're asking an algorithms person, how long? And then maybe they're asking sort of a thought leader, how long? But we've really seen recently quantum computing start to take its exponential curve with error corrected qubits starting to be shown in quantum computers that are what make them truly possible. And it's an exponential technology. It's like the Human Genome Project, where sort of nothing seemed to happen for 8, 9 years. And then suddenly in the last few years, it all kicked off because it was all these pieces coming together. So when you hear all of these estimates, it was a really interesting point that they're always made in a particular area. But the point is that first quantum computer is going to be built by all these areas coming together. And that's really hard to see. And it's one of the reasons we think it'll be here much sooner than later. Now you asked about critical infrastructure. So the UK defines 13 different sectors as critical infrastructure. Lots of them won't be surprising. Communications, finance, emergency services, transport, water, health. And they've actually just added a 14th, data centers, because, and this is really prescient, this is really good of them. That's where a lot of high value data lives. I mean, whole banks are moving their systems to the cloud. So if they go down, if we can't get in touch with them, that really means a lot of the services we've come to rely on, you can't get the data that you need. And these are all sectors that you would feel immediately if something happened. So if you think of CrowdStrike, that happened not too long ago, I mean, it ground air travel to a halt. 60% of GP practices were impacted. They couldn't get into the records. They had no idea who was supposed to be showing up that day. And it was an accident. Imagine if this was a targeted, coordinated, large-scale attack. I mean, the people sort of that accidentally did this were hard at work at fixing it, and that was a huge amount of insight that let it get fixed very quickly. But if this is an attacker, This is not fixed in a couple of days. This takes weeks, months. If you really want to get into the paranoid, I watched the movie Leave the World Behind recently, and it's really, it doesn't take much before you can't talk to people and you can't buy food before we're in a bit of trouble. So um, the critical infrastructure, all like that's why it's called critical. It's stuff we rely on every day, and so it really needs to be protected with these kinds of sort of quantum safe new algorithms and new hardware like what we build.
So you just told us about the kind of timeline that the organizations or their security leaders need to build up. Um, Here is another amateur question. Do you think the because AI is developing so fast, do you think it can crunch that timeline?
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. Because that's like these technologies are being put together, and what we say about our technology is that it is secure against any advancements in computing. So that includes quantum computers. That includes AI. Because I can talk a little bit more in a second about sort of how quantum key distribution works. It accomplishes that task I said at the beginning, where I want a key and I want to share it with you, and I want no one else to listen in. Um, and it's secure. I might as well explain it. Its security is based on the laws of physics being correct, versus the algorithms that we're currently using today, where the security is based on some math problems being hard for a classical computer. And they were never proven. They were always conjectured. And lo and behold, a quantum computer comes along and it's shown that there's an algorithm that can break them. So when it comes to quantum key distribution, again, the task is to get a key from me to you and no one to listen in. And a very nice way of doing that is I pick keys randomly. So we have something called a quantum random number generator, just picking zeros and ones really randomly according to the laws of physics. And then I'm going to take one bit of key and encode it in a photon, so a particle of light. And you can use different degrees of freedom. Sort of photons have polarization, horizontal and vertical. We happen to use sort of the time of arrival, and we can actually spread a photon into two parts and put a phase between it. But basically, we encode these zeros and ones on a photon, and then it's light. We're used to sending this around in our telecoms networks. It can go through fiber. It can go through free space telescope links. And if it gets to you, you measure it, and you're going to recover that key bit. Where the security comes from is, and this is something I used to teach sort of second year physics students, measurement disturbs a quantum system. So anyone trying to listen into this key distribution, because they want to eventually listen into the conversation we're going to have or my bank details, they've got to interact with this photon as it's going from me to you. And that's a measurement. And so this photon's humming away fine, and then they come in and they nudge it a bit. And it still comes to you. They've tried to learn something, but now it looks a little different. It's actually got some errors in it. And this is where mathematicians come in, and they can very precisely relate how many errors you and I find in this process to how much information a third party might have gotten. And the nice thing is, it doesn't have to be zero errors because nothing is perfect in the real world. We can actually tolerate sort of a 10% error rate, but we still have enough of an advantage between two of us that we continue to play some math tricks, and we can squeeze out this eavesdropper so that at the end of the day, only you and I have a copy of this key. And its security is based on the laws of physics being correct, that measurement is going to disturb this quantum system, which is a much stronger security promise than a conjecture that an algorithm is hard to crack. And a conjecture just means we've tried hard and haven't got there, but we don't know for sure that someone else won't get there. So that's how we do a much better security promise. And I took us off on a tangent. I think you asked a question about timeline to start this business. Do you want to remind me?
No, the question was, will the evolution or the speed of evolution of AI at this point crunch the timelines for quantum to be, easily adoptable or something like
Um,
that?
okay, so there's two variants of it. I was originally answering in the sense that our systems protect against any advancements in computing. So if you don't even use a quantum computer, but if you start to throw AI, machine learning, and huge supercomputer clusters at cracking algorithms, they can actually get quite a long ways. But because our key distribution is protected by the laws of physics, which we tested for 125 years or so, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about any advancements in AI or machine learning, quantum computing. But then I think the flavor you meant of the question is AI going to help quantum computing come along faster? And that's also a yes, because there's some really interesting work where the biggest problem with quantum computing is people have small scale quantum computers, 10, 100, even 1,000 qubits in some cases, but they're physical qubits, they're called, because they're just they're physical qubits that have quite high error rates. And what needs to happen is you actually use sort of combinations of them, you join them together to be a logical qubit. You sort of imagine that if there's a chance that they might sort of flip their bit, well, you make a logical qubit 3 qubits, and then you take sort of a majority vote. So if one flips its bit, the other two are still right, you take a majority vote, and you're still right. It's called error correction. And really, the last 6 months, now it's 10 months, I guess, because this was before Christmas, people really started showing error correction on quantum computers, logical qubits. And AI has been, and machine learning has been a huge help in that, figuring out codes, and decreasing sort of the number of qubits you need to make up a logical qubit. So full stop, the answer is yes to your question. AI can absolutely sort of bring us closer to that. It's called Q-Day, basically, the day a cryptographically relevant quantum computer turns on.
So, what should a CISO of a critical infrastructure organization be ready with? Can they be ready, first of
Oh,
all?
they absolutely can.
Oh,
And the other point worth making is it really only takes one large scale quantum computer to put the whole system at risk. It's not
right.
like we need a plethora of them. As soon as a state actor turns on one, you now get into this paranoid atmosphere where you can't trust any communication because you don't know what they're pointing it at. Um, NCSC, as you pointed out to start, has just released guidance that suggests you need to prepare to migrate by 2028. You need to switch your high priority systems to something called post quantum algorithms by 2031. I'll tell you about post quantum algorithms in a second. And then you need to complete your overall migration by 2035. And we'd really suggest that you need to half all those timelines. Australia is actually, their government has done exactly this. Because again, I used to teach students, they will take as long as you give them. If you give them 2 weeks for an assignment, they will take 2 weeks. If you give them a week for an assignment, they will take a week. And more than that, this is a big problem. So it will take longer than we think. So if they put a 10-year horizon on it, companies probably will get there in 15 or 20, and we need to get there in something like 5. So when it comes to the steps, there's absolutely stuff that they can do. The number one is put it on your boardroom agenda, so that it's high priority. It gets some resources. You start reporting against it. Number two, and this is very common, lots of experts will say this, start to do a census. Where does encryption touch your organization? Where are the algorithms and software? Where's the hardware? And do that quickly, because that will help bump up the priority on your boardroom agenda, because you will quickly see a very complicated problem with lots of equipment and algorithms. I mean, we use cryptography everywhere. You just don't sort of realize why you're trusting your systems. And then sort of once you've done a census, then you can start making a plan, really. And you'll quickly find that there are new tools. This is the sort of the second half of the answer. The two main ones are something called post-quantum cryptography algorithms, PQC you'll often hear them called. And they're new algorithms. They're still software-based, kind of like the old ones, but they're based on new math problems that, so far to the best of our knowledge, aren't susceptible to a quantum computer. NIST actually started a competition in, I'm going to get the date wrong. It was either 2016 or 2018. I think it was 2016, going for about 9 years, where people submitted almost 100 algorithms that they thought were going to be secure to a quantum computer. And it really took 8 or 9 years to vet them. And they've now, just last August, announced 4, and I think they've just added a 5th that are believed to be quantum resilient, is the term they use, because it's not proven. It's a conjecture, but they've thrown a lot of very smart people at it to see whether they think they can break it. So these are a critical tool, especially for any of your data that's going to have a short lifetime. So if you think of like stock trading, when I put in an order, it probably lasts a morning, or you can even go to high frequency trading where it matters for a millisecond. PQC algorithm is absolutely perfect. But then if you want something that has a proven security, like QKD, that's perfect for the longer lifetime stuff. So government secrets, defense, even just major enterprises designing in and out of the cloud with high performance computing centers. So there's multiple tools out there. So get it on your boardroom agenda, do a census of where you use it, and then basically start exploring, do some proof of concepts in-house to really upskill yourself as quickly as you can. There's plenty of wonderful PQC folks out there. We've worked with some partners in the UK, like PQ Shield, and start working with quantum safe hardware people as well. That's the slightly sad thing, is that for the longest time, the hardware was sort of neglected because people sort of hear hardware and they think, oh, it's going to be a little bit harder to install. It's going to be a bit more expensive. Yes, but you get a huge benefit from that. And ultimately, like all the information systems we're using run on hardware. So there's plenty of quantum test beds out there. You don't have to build your own. And they're dying for more end users to come and play with them and give their requirements so that they can be designed with enterprises' needs in mind. I talked for a long time there, so I'll pause.
No, but you're explaining it so well, even I'm able to understand so. But then you are an academic, so that's expected. One last question. What tools, whatever you explained right now was a strategy, a plan of action that you can put in place. Are there any tools that you can talk about that will help CIOs stay prepared for when quantum computers come and cryptography fails?
Um, I think honestly, and I guess I used to be a lecturer, so I would say this, but honestly, the best tool is education. So put it on your agenda, put some resources behind it, and start learning with it, learning about it, and start playing with it. There's open source libraries out there that you can download for PQC. On the hardware side, you'd like to join sort of a test bed, or I mean, you're welcome to come and bug us at KETS, and we'll talk your ear off, as you can plainly see. So the best tool, honestly, is just education, and starting to get a size of the problem, and it'll be a reinforcing effect because it's taken a while for telecoms providers to really get serious about this, for banks to really get serious about this, because to some extent they're waiting for end users, enterprises to really put this on their agenda and start asking for it. And there's been a noticeable shift in the last 6 to 12 months. That really is the case. And so the more you do that, you start spinning a flywheel of lots of great end user and customer requirements going in. So we build the right thing, which then gets the telcos and the data centers starting to buy solutions and change their networks. And then that in turn starts to get business for sort of young startups like us that ultimately are going to VCs asking for money. And they're saying, well, show me the market. So it's really starting to come on. And the best thing they can do is educate themselves and get involved. Again, they're more than welcome to get in touch with KETS. There's plenty of test beds around the world. And wherever you are, we're happy to point you to one to get involved with. And if you're thinking about sort of waiting, just keep in mind that sort of retrofitting this kind of stuff after Q Day is going to be significantly more expensive than implementing sort of that ounce of medicine rather than sort of 2 ounces ounce of prevention rather than 2 ounces of medicine. You're better off investing now. It'll be a lot less costly. And hopefully you won't have a break in your operations, because I really think it's going to be here in 5 years, but other people are putting out timelines 10 to 15 years. And if it's shorter, you really will go back to swiping. I used to do this as a kid. For Christmas, my sister and I would go and buy my mom's Christmas present, and she'd give us her credit card. So I still have this visceral sense, early enough where they'd swipe it on carbon paper, and I'd scribble my little name, and that was fun. But obviously, we have much more efficient ways of transacting now. But if there's a break in our security, you'll be back to swiping credit cards with carbon paper and mailing them in. So that's the other reason to sort of get involved quickly, because worst case, you'll just be protected a bit sooner. And actually, one other point worth making is there's something called harvest now, decrypt later, because we are currently sending information. I mean, this podcast, this video stream is going over the internet. And it is just a well-known fact that state actors, bad actors, are saving large quantities of data. Probably not my banking information. It doesn't have enough money in it. But when you think of government secrets, when you think of major financial institutions, high net worth individuals, they're saving all that stuff because it's easy. Classical data is cheap. I mean, memory in your computer is cheap. Sitting on it, so they're harvesting it and waiting to crack it later when a quantum computer does come online. So until we make the switch to quantum safe hardware, you've really got to treat anything you send as being in the clear in as little as 5 years. And some stuff you won't care about, but certainly my medical records, I don't want anybody browsing online or selling online in 5 years' time. And there's plenty of other things like that. So that's another sort of really key point to make.
So I've run out of questions because you've answered everything I wanted to know.
I have one other one. Can I make one other point?
Sure, absolutely, Chris.
It's cybersecurity, and often that's very much like insurance. And I buy car insurance partially because I'm told to, but it's for my own good in case I have an accident. But it
Safety.
also it's safety, but it also means you're a little. I dredge getting out my wallet when I have to pay for car insurance, even though it's important. But it's not just preventing bad things. It can really be an enabler. And I really like this example given to us. We were talking to a jet engine manufacturer, and they make some of the engines that are on the big planes you're flying on every day. And they would really love if there's an engine having trouble somewhere in the world for one of their engineers to be able to shove a borescope, the camera down the engine, take pictures, and then to have sort of 2 or 3 major repair centers that they could send those pictures back, have experts on hand. They could handshake around the world so they were always live. They'd be able to solve so many problems much quicker and much better. And they can't do that. And it's all because of security reasons. They don't want pictures of jet engines that are potentially malfunctioning, getting into the wrong hands. They don't even want anyone, they won't allow their customers to reveal where the plane is. And it's all because of security concerns. But I like that example because it's a positive one. If we really upgrade our systems to be quantum safe, we'll have a lot more faith and security in them. And then suddenly applications like that are possible. And that's a positive one where we'll have better, more efficient plane maintenance and things like that. We'll have less time stuck on the ground, and we'll have better safety with planes. So I love making that example because it's not always insurance against something bad. I think once you have this in place, now you have an even more trusted communications infrastructure. Imagine all the things you could start to build with that.
Right. So it all comes down to better be prepared.
It all comes down to whether you'll be prepared. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So thanks so much, Chris. A very enlightening, extremely informative session. We keep writing about stuff most of the time which we don't understand, but this time I really understood, I promise you.
I'm glad. And they were wonderful questions. Honestly, the best questions come from the non-quantum people because we get too in love with our technology and it's everyone else is like, how am I going to use it? What does it do for me? And that's the important bit of it.
Yeah, because you're too close to it. You're too close to the center. So it's a little difficult. So I would request if we could have another session. So if there is some development happening in a couple of months, it would be really nice if you can explain to us, to me, and to the CISOs we write for, so that it'll add value to my content as well.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.